Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on the place on Earth that you are currently in. And welcome to the session on learning from high scorers. My name is Bartłomiej Janiak, and it's pleasure on my side to have Kamil Patrick with us, who will engage with me and with you in hopefully interesting discussion on high scorers and on just working with those who aim to score really high. Hi, Kamil.
Hi. So we'll engage in discussion how to actually learn from high scorers. That's a very nice title that you got here, right? It's not teaching high scorers, but learning from high scorers.
Yeah, because it's like you need to learn if you want to teach them. Yeah, so you need to experiment them. So we'll look at the options, and probably, as I imagine, that some of the teachers present here, or some of them would like to, or aspire, or they say that I do have high scorers in my language school. So it's like, I would say it's an element like to put a badge of courage that you deal with high scorers. But Kamila, what I will aim to ask is some questions to show that this like down to earth reality on teaching high scorers. And before we start, just a few sentences about us. Kamil, if you could, you can see a mini description, but Kamil, let us know who you are and why you.
So I've been with Pearson for some time. I'm just like you, some like 10 years. But at the same time, I'm also a university teacher based in Poland. And in my university practice, I focus on EAP, English for Academic Purposes. This is the majority of groups I work for. So in this EAP courses, the people, the groups are getting ready for some exams, external exams like PTE Academic, also Pearson English International Certificate, higher levels, and internal university exams. These are EAP exams, right? So these are not general English, but EAP exams. Level C1 is this level that we typically want to achieve. Obviously, we have higher scorers than C1 in many groups, but this is the standard, the benchmark that we want students to leave university with.
Super. Now, audience, you've got Q&A, so if you have any comments or questions, you can post them in the Q&A, and I will try, if we manage to answer. Probably will not answer all of the questions. Looking
as
at
usual,
the time,
that's the problem.
As usual,
right?
probably
we never can do that.
At some session there was like absolute record breaker with the number of questions, but it was on AI. So AI is a hot topic. So my name is Bartłomiej Janiak, and I've been with Pearson for like around 10 years. So probably I've known Kamil for quite a long time.
And we met some like 8 years ago to be precise, right?
Yes, and on various assessments. And right now I'm in a training team, and I design educational programs. So the around the world with PTE Academic, the programs aimed at teachers, the programs aimed at test takers, and I also support local regions in delivering some of the sessions when there is a need. But today I will. Okay. So as we have the very first question, Amadip. So what is the best way to improve extended writing? So this session is talking about high scorers. And throughout this year, we had numerous sessions on skills development. And last year we had sessions on skills development, and they are all recorded. So we'll not talk about read aloud, like if I should speak clearly and fluently, or what is the area of complex sentences, subordinate clauses, because these sessions were in this teacher training program this year, and the sessions are all recorded, and they are designed by skill. So if you go to this website Around the World with PTE Academic, you will find the recordings. By the end, if we have some time, I will just come back to you, Kamil, and say, Kamil, how to improve extended writing? But we'll leave it. We'll leave it at the end.
That has been discussed in some other sessions as well, right?
Yeah. So apart from questions and conversation with Kamil, I will share with you, and I will try to play tennis game with Kamil, because I used to run exam preparation courses long time ago, and but most importantly, I used to be a member of, I used to attend of something which I called a really hardcore exam preparation course, but I scored and I excelled at the scores. So I attended several exam preparation courses. Some of them I would say were mediocre, and some of them were really of top quality. So I'm going to share my own experience as a teacher, but as an exam, as a test taker and a student, just to see the perspective. And Kamil, you will share your academic knowledge, academic background as a person who designs and leads this type of programs. So without further ado, there are 3 elements to cover this in this session. The first element, like we'll talk about motivation, preparation procedures among high scorers. Then we've got benefits of teaching high scorers and the challenges, because my understanding is that, like, whether we like it or not, it's not so easy to teach a high scorer. Kamil, am I right?
On the one hand, you are right, but I suppose it will come up later in our discussion. But there are a lot of areas that make teaching high scorers like giving you the spur, right? And this is very dynamic. So I personally love high scorers, right?
Okay.
Because this is completely different type of class when
different
when
type of class and a different reality.
Although, yeah, it could be really exhausting, right, for the teacher.
Yes, but if you want to strive for the best, it means you need to put in the work. But so to start with, and this is like you can, our wonderful audience, you can type in the comments in the Q&A, because we can use Q&A to hear your comments. You own the school and the person opens the door and you engage with a conversation with him. And how can you tell that you are dealing with a high scorer? Okay, if you could share with us in the Q&A anything, any signs that would signal that this person is a high scorer. Okay, so if you can share with us your observation, how can you tell that you are dealing with high scorer? And Kamil, the question to you. So there is a student entering your classes, and how can you tell that he or she is a high scorer?
There are some signs which actually might be a little bit misleading, I would say. But you know, the first contact, well, obviously the first thing that you turn attention to is this pronunciation that is very natural, flowing, right, on the word level, right, on the sentence level, intonation patterns. That's the very first thing, right, that it somehow impresses you. Then you hear the kinds of vocabulary, structures, grammar that this person uses. And here, obviously, you have to be careful because, well, the first impressions, as it is, they might be misleading because sometimes those people who are very fluent, they seem to have perfect pronunciation. When you sit down with them and when you start with some serious reading activities or writing activities, you realize that they're good communicatively when it comes to speaking communication, spoken communication. But then when you dig deeper, right, there are some problems. So yes, you can recognize high scorers from this very first impression, but no, I never trust my impressions, right? I always want to dig deeper, right? Check such people. But well, typically this is confirmed in writing, in reading skills or listening skills, especially.
So general, if a person speaks spontaneously and there are some advanced grammar structure usage and high level vocabulary. So actually this is, I guess, what you've just mentioned. So you can see it, but this is just, as you mentioned, I would treat it like an invitation to check further. My understanding as like a person being within exam preparation group is when you engage in a conversation with high scorer, and this is, I would say, really important element for the audience, for her communication is no longer an issue. So this person doesn't have any challenges in expressing their own ideas or simplifying the language. For her, the language and speaking is only the tool to convey the ideas and the complex problems. Whereas the low scorer will struggle, and you will see that the language is this key element. And for the high scorer, the language is just the tool, and it's used freely. As Jenna said, there is an element of being spontaneous, and it's just like a natural conversation, as if it was like a native language. Am I right, Kamil?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like this is communication. Actually, when you work with high scorers, it's not like striving for communication. It's just like polishing communication, right? Helping formulate arguments using a little bit more complex structure. This is all that your job is about. It's not about like helping them get across the message. That's clear.
Okay, and this is you've got the QR code. So if you're using your mobile, so scan the QR code, because what we wanted to show you is that you should be fully aware of what you are taking on your shoulders when you deal with high scorer. So when you score it, when you just scan the QR code, you will get a link to this GSC toolkit. This is the tool that it could help you in designing the lesson or objectives or the course objectives. And I've taken a sample of learning objectives for the person at GSC 8390. So this is C1 and C2, and this is the high scorer. So just by looking at the sentences, they should
can elucidate the information.
Yes, can elucidate the information. And everywhere you've got the complex subjects, complex professional and technical presentations, can participate effectively in live, online, professional, academic situation, giving further clarification. So these are the learning objectives that you should have. You should remember when you teach high scorer. So it's not about like reading for gists or reading for detail or answering question in short sentence, because for them they are way above if we talk about high scorer. Am I right, Kamil?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. This is actually when you work with high scorers, it's actually something a little bit more than just language that you work with, right? You work with this cognitive challenges, cognitive abilities a lot.
Yeah.
Language is just, I would say, the tool, the background to that. This is the vehicle for communication, obviously, but there's this extra element there in every class where you teach high scorers.
Super. And if you use this GSC toolkit, you can just you can change the GSC level to B1 and see how the learning objectives differ. So from my perspective, is you need to be a really solid, I would say, exam provider and a teacher with a really good language background in order to take on the challenge, I dare to say the challenge, of working with someone aiming for 83 and 90. Because it's not about teaching the tenses, it's not about the present perfect, probably it's not about conditionals any longer, because they are already
sadly
there.
enough.
Sadly enough, yeah. So you cannot just offer,
because then your life is so comfortable if you teach like tenses, right? You know it is perfectly well, right?
Yep, and this is the academic reality. Okay, so
I'm using irony here, obviously. As I said, I love high scorers.
Yep. So the high scorer, and there is this motivation and preparation procedures, because I would say that there is a difference, and this bar is slightly higher. So first of all, how do you keep those? And remember that high scorers, we're talking about C1 and C2, that there is this student entering your office and saying like, I need 85 in PTE Academic. So you say like, okay, so you are C1, C2. Looking forward to our cooperation. And without moving into the level screening procedures, let's suppose that this person has this level. So how do you keep them motivated throughout this course?
Yeah, that's a task, right? That's a task because if they come to my course, right, and they are really C1, C2, as you said, like 85 GSE, let's say. So, as I mentioned, the language won't keep them with me, right? Because it's they know the language, right? They need a sophistication there, right? And this is what has to be provided. Like I know, for example, when we're doing writing, then I have to go to specific language areas and show them how they can express the same thing in a much more sophisticated way, where the language is very simple. Or, as I said, I have to give them some cognitive challenge, actually, right? So force them to go beyond the classroom. I know, running some debates on some problems where they have to go through some preparation phase. I know the thing that comes to my mind is like in data science group, right? Students doing a course in data science. I know 2 or 3 days ago, I had this debate in which they had to decide on the correct, good software, right? Good piece of software for some specific purpose. So that was they had to prepare, they had to read about the software, think critically about look at the, let's say, websites produced by the software producers, engage critical thinking, right? Analyzing, synthesizing information, then put it together into the debate. So, as I said, you have to give them a little bit more than just language, right? So sophistication and this cognitive challenge, I would say.
So if I hear your words and your comments, I say that these are the skills that actually are required to excel in PTE Academic, but because it's not only about the language, because the language, that's a different story, but it's about the critical thinking. It's about the ability to synthesize elements, to work very smoothly on cause and effect, and to offer the solution in right essay, or to ability to extract the most relevant information out of a lecture, and the lecture is an authentic material. So this is like what you mentioned, this debate, when they had to extract information, they had to read critically some elements. So actually, these are the skills that they need to practice.
Authentic material is absolute must here, right? I mean, obviously, well, like question papers, all the course books, right? Exam preparation, this is fine. But as I said, this is just focusing on language, and language is not enough typically for those. So you have to go sooner or later. You have to go to work with authentic materials.
So I'm glad that you mentioned this exam preparation, and I'd like this to stand out. And I'm wondering whether you agree with me, like a person being in this teaching industry for such a long time. Like, there is this person entering your doors and entering the premises of your wonderful exam preparation test center, and this person says at the very beginning, the visa requirements or the university requirements are, and I need to get some. I'm going to refer to some of the questions at the end, because some of them are really interesting. My exam requirements are 85. And then you sit with the student and you just show them this GSE, and you show them this CFR correlation, just to demonstrate so proficient. Then you have this conversation, and this initial conversation tells you the hint. And I'm wondering whether you agree with me on this, because I'm fully in support of extensive exam preparation courses, like, let's say, 1 month exam preparation course on one condition, and this condition for me is non-negotiable, that this person is already at the language level, academic language level required for the particular admission. So it means that his language skills, the grammar, the vocabulary, the structure, the written skills are already at C1 level. And then you have hyper-intensive course doing question type by question type. You're using the question bank. You just show them the strategies. You just offer really good feedback on writing, but he is at this level. Would you agree?
So if we're talking a month's course, right, the
Yes.
strategy is all you can do there, right?
Yes.
Not anything else, right? Because simply you can't go from one level to another within 1 month, right? You need hundreds of hours to move, especially at higher levels, like starting from level B2. It's like hundreds of hours to go higher on this, let's say, GSE scale, for example.
Yes, yeah, and the problem starts when the candidates enters the first screening lesson, and I assume that it's a good practice, but it's a must that this person, if it's individual or group, they either take the placement test, so they need a valid tool to evaluate your exam level, and this is the yes or no decision, because unfortunately I can imagine someone saying like, hey, they look at this person and this person is like B1 plus closing to B2. And they say, okay, my exam is within 1 month. Can you teach me this? So the space between the range, the grammar, the skills needed between B1 plus and C2 is so big that if I were a student, like very grounded in teaching reality, and if I heard someone telling me that they will upskill me within 1 month from upper intermediate to proficient,
what you need is a miracle.
Yes, I would say that this person is offering miracles, and maybe miracles happen, but the reality that it's not happening, because probably the frustration will kick in and
the pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So intensive crash courses, yes, on condition that you are very close to this level. Another situation is like you are very close to C1. So you are B2 plus and you are approaching C1. Then would you agree with me, Kamil, that there is a chance to intensively upskill, getting closer to this expected range?
Sure, right, yes. So but that we're talking really intensive courses, like I know a few hours a day. And even with that, with this intensive course, you will not succeed, because then you need some specific, I would say, ability to get from, in a very short period of time, like we're talking, 1 month to 3 months, from B1, B2 plus to C1. So not every student will be able to do that, right? So you have to be ready for some failures, right? Simply can't.
So the high scorers, long preparation period. Just they need to be at this language level. Just even if they know this exam strategies, but work on the language. And as you mentioned, those students, probably some of the students, they already work. They are professionals. They work in different companies. Either they study, they are writing their master thesis. So how is it that, how can you show them how to balance this exam preparation with other responsibilities? And anything that happened to you?
That's an issue. That's definitely an issue. I work with university students, mostly in graduate programs, and this is the moment where a lot of them start working, and they very often, these are very often not some odd jobs, but they because they have their bachelor's degrees, for example, so they start some serious jobs, and then learning, right, becomes a problem, and motivating them becomes a problem. So what I count on here is very often their autonomy, because high scorers are autonomous creatures, right? They know how to do things. So I set a lot of independent tasks, right? Or we employ some self-correctness techniques, right? I show them how to work with them. Or sometimes it requires it requires a little bit of creative action. Like, for example, I once had a student who had real problems coming to my classes, was very irregular, and we were just thinking what he can do, actually, right? Not to stop developing. And well, we came up with some solutions, and one of the solutions was, for example, because he wrote a lot of emails in English. So the first thing to do, for example, turn off your AI tools, right?
Turn off your AI tools.
Yeah, and
What's happening?
write emails on your own just to practice,
Yeah.
right? He had to write a lot of formal emails, so thanks to that, he had the chance to practice a lot of formal English. So sometimes you need some creative approach, and remember that they are autonomous. They can do a lot of things. If they're guided, if you give them guidance, they can do a lot of things autonomously.
So it's not like hand-to-hand instruction and explaining them step by step. It's rather delegating and showing them this and giving them autonomy.
For example, right? I know if I get some writing, I know an essay, right? So I start by, for example, not showing them exactly what they could do better, but just signaling the places where they have looked for better solutions. And this way, they learn this ability to somehow self-correct, right? To correct on their own things, to identify the places where there is room for improvement. So I help them with these autonomous learning a little bit.
So this is what I really like. Is like you are not pointing like, hey, this is the mistake and there is the correct version, but you are rather like highlighting an area that they could do better. But behind it, there is your belief that they can self-correct themselves because they are already at this level.
Develop this sense, right? For example, they tend to use a little bit simplistic language in writing, and well, after a few feedbacks like that, they will develop the sense of okay, I should use a little bit more sophisticated language, and they will monitor themselves, right? If the language is too simplistic, and they, as I said, they can do a lot of that on their own. In their own pace, if they have to combine, for example, work and study.
Super, great. I like this tip, like offering them autonomy. So be inspiring, Kamil.
Yeah, just as I mentioned, like this cognitive abilities, right? Give them inspiration, because they will be looking for, typically, they will be looking for more than just language, just as we discussed. Yeah.
And the second one, try to be open with this autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah, because they simply can. We're talking here C1, C2 students who can be responsible. Just we have to trust them. You have to believe in them, and maybe guide them a little bit. But they can take responsibility, and they can also choose their own material. Right? If you cooperate with them, they can bring their own material, their own articles they work with, or lectures they struggle with, and you can do it together. So be open to the feedback from the students, actually, what they bring into the classroom. This way you will keep them motivated, obviously.
So something like signaled a lamp in my head that it might be a challenge as well, but we're gonna talk about challenges later on.
Yes, that's obviously, I mean,
let's leave it
that's the
for
challenge
the time
for
being.
you. Yes, definitely.
And what about this sophistication? I think I understand, like, because this would be the funny situation for a C1 test taker, offering them scripted materials that were redesigned to fit particular level. If you are dealing with someone, as someone mentioned in the chat, I need 83 in the Q&A, or 85. It's not it's not about the scripted materials. So it's about real deal academic article or a scientific magazine. Am I right? And you just work with the magazine that is offering true knowledge, and language is just the medium.
Just as it says here, you are pushing your students beyond the exam into real academic settings, right? And this number 3 takeaway, right? So this is this is what's how you have to work with high scorers, because as I said, they look for something more.
So I guess
Typically.
it's connected with this sophistication, yeah. So it's
and
not
sophistication. If you want to keep them motivated, they don't want tenses. They don't want articles. Well, prepositions maybe, but only, I would say, low frequency words. Prepositions. They want really idiomatic language, complex sentence structure, things like that. Low frequency collocations. This is what they want, and well. You have to provide them with that, right, as a teacher, right? So that's a great thing about being a teacher, actually, that you provide your students with what they really need.
What they really need, and it's not like teaching them something that they should already have. So I imagine that if we do have teachers in this webinar listening, and like if you get students who are struggling with the tense use, or who are struggling with like a basic essay composition, or with summarize, the question is, do you really have a high scorer within your class? Or maybe you have a student with high inspiration, but it's probably your role to bring those inspiration down to earth and say, sorry, 85 is not happening this week. Because these are the elements.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, these are the elements you need to work on. Because you struggle with the complex sentences. And the complex sentences are something that you should already have. So I can work with you, but it will take you longer to get to this element of C1 and C2 level. So the motivation, and this is interesting. Like you said, like you enjoy it. So, well, what have you learned from teaching students that actually aspire and that those who achieve score really high, that you said you've got those exams C1 level?
We don't have that much time to share everything, right? No. Obviously, well, this is the journey, actually, right? That both sides are taking. And if it is not a journey, then you really the job, your teaching job, becomes a real hardship. But if you look at it that you setting on a journey, or setting out, right, embarking on a journey, then that's a complete difference. So I have learned so many different things. Like I know, for example, I'm right now teaching a group of students of physics, right? And we're working on some articles about nuclear fusion, and well, obviously, before reading the article, right, working with them, I did not realize that there were some new developments in nuclear fusion, what nuclear fusion is. I had to learn that, right? Obviously, there is always some kind of contract between us in such groups that, well, I'm not an expert, right? I help with language, with communication, how to communicate nuclear fusion, but obviously I'm not going to explain how it works. This is what they teach me, right? And it's always like two-way process with high scorers. They always bring this input that makes you learn a lot new things.
So do I get it right? It's like you don't have to be an expert on every academic field, because your specialty is the language, but those high scorers, they can help you to move within this reality. Yeah,
absolutely. This is, as I said, that's one of the first things I start my courses with. Let's have a contract. You teach me. I mean, I teach you, and I'm paid for that. You teach me. You're not paid for that, right? But you do teach me things, and if you're open, right, you can learn great things from them, right? Because they typically come with some background, right? We're talking here, high scorers are typically, in context of PTE Academic, they typically have some background, some educational or university background, and they can bring in a lot of interesting new things. Like I discovered Google Notebook recently due to, well, thanks to the classes with my data science where we were working with an article on AI solutions, like legal solutions in different countries, and somehow it came up, and they taught me a lot about it. So hundreds of things like that. Definitely, we benefit a lot.
So I'm really keen to learn from you that you in this conversation, you never talked that I was working with them on conditional sentences. I had to teach them how to use subordinate clauses, etc. So I assume that those things could happen, but they are just this margin of the teaching process when it comes to C1, C2. Please remember, we are talking about C1, C2, check GSC toolkit, object learning objectives for them. So I assume that you can dwell on it, but it's just a marginal element in the process.
This is just like sometimes I know when the structure, for example, is complicated, a little bit more complicated due to some strange use of, I don't know, third conditional, for example. So it sometimes can happen, but absolutely this is beyond this level, right? So this is not tenses, this is not passives, this is like communicating, understanding nuances in a text, communicating with complex nuance structures. This is what we're talking here about, definitely. And actually, this is another thing that you learn from your students, because for example, I know reading your students' essays on such levels, it forces you to continuously just, I know, checking how you can express it in a little bit more sophisticated, more nuanced way, and you learn language as well, right? To tell you the truth, you learn every week. I learn something new. That, for example, some new interesting word that could be a replacement for another more common word. So that's also learning process on your side as a teacher.
So I'm gonna move to takeaways because I'm measuring the time to keep our audience in focus and to appreciate and to honor their time. So the benefits, as you said, like this constant development, that you as a teacher, you will stay sharp.
Yes. Otherwise, it's impossible to keep the pace, right? So to keep up with them, because typically, well, these are young people, very dynamic, very open, right, with a lot of ideas, and all you can do, you have to keep up with them. No other way.
No other. And what about this? Because you mentioned autonomy, which is, I totally agree and I fully appreciate it. And you said, like, at some point when you discuss it, and here's the takeaway too, is like you can use their potential for some peer teaching.
Yeah, exactly. This is because, well, the reality is that in some groups you have mixed abilities, right? So you will have groups that mix C1, let's say, and B2 students. Just this is the university reality, right? That depends on, obviously, on the situation. But so they could be great source of they can give drive not only to you but to those a little bit weaker students, although you have to balance that. You have to be careful, because some weaker students might tend to get intimidated by high scorers. But what I like doing in my classes is when we have some group projects or pair work, I very often put mixed levels in a group or in a pair, observing them very carefully, whether it brings right expected results. And I can see that those high scorers typically are this driving force to, I know, to motivate the other students to, well, do the project, teaching them as well at the same time, right? A lot of sophisticated language. I even experimented, and I think that was I got good results with joint writing activities. Like they had to work on some project, and then they jointly had to write a report in a mixed pair, like mixed ability pair. And from the feedback I got, many students, many low-level students, were happy that they could learn a lot together with their partner who helped them with writing. They saw this a little bit more sophisticated language. They learned a lot of it. But here, obviously, you have to be careful, because there's this issue of getting intimidated.
Okay, but I really like this, and to you, our wonderful audience, if you have never done joint writing within your classes, of course, you take PTE Academic on your own, and this is
but
the time for
that's
you.
just like one.
But this is the learning process, and I
yeah.
don't see anything again in the learning process to have joint writing with the person who is more fluent with the better language and the command of English, academic English, and those slightly lower, just to offer this upskill exposure that I can learn from you, and maybe this high scorer could also learn something from the low level students, because usually they can ask very simple questions and like, hey, why is it so, and what's this, and I don't get this structure. So this is like autonomy that you mentioned. Well, you get satisfaction. Is it true that you get satisfaction from working with those high level students?
I hope this is clear, but yeah, obviously, well, the most obvious is when they come back to you and they say, "Oh, I got 85 right in PTE Academic," and they were really like aiming at higher degrees. But it's not only that, right? It's just like when they get back to you and they, for example, I know just a week ago I had a conversation that they finally found. I mean, one of my students plucked up the courage to take part in some conference and present a paper. That was students' conference, not very high-profile conference, but that was students' conference. But they presented a paper in English. And well, this is a great satisfaction for you that you somehow gave them this, I don't know, confidence, for example, which could be used also later on. I asked this person actually to report back on what kind of conference that was, how they struggled, right, with this, the limitations. So this is another tool that you can use to motivate some other students in the group.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that he came to you with this report on delivering something authentic, because as I truly believe that the score is important to be accepted and to get this admission. But for me, just a score is a small element. So if they come to me and say, hey, I've got 90, 85, thank you, that's okay, I would be happy. But if someone comes to me later and say, thanks to your course, I managed to deliver presentation with the research paper because your critical thinking skills allowed me, I would treat it like a true signal of this good quality exam, because score is important. However, your English will be used later on at the university or in your research profile career. And then no one really takes care of your language. They treat it as if they take it for granted, that you need to be there. So it's like preparing for real life scenarios. And
this is what your job is about, actually.
What the job is about. And I hope that those teachers present, they share this, that it's about equipping them with the knowledge so that they will flourish in their academic environment. And the score is just a small step. So all the good things, but I believe, and I've had some teachers saying that it's not so good to have high scorers because they pose various challenges. Kamil, is like the dark side of the moon, that there are some challenges when it comes to teaching high scorers.
I mean, as I said, those challenges are actually some opportunities at the same time, right? So even if there are, they can easily be turned into opportunities. Obviously, something that, well, has been already mentioned, that they keep the pace, right? They don't let you stop, right? You have to keep up with them, which is, as I said, exhausting, but at the same time, you learn a lot, and you have to be ready for that, right? So that with the high scorers, it's not a bed of roses, right? It's not just like you have, I know, 90-minute class and you'll have the chance to scroll through your social media, right, during the class. No way. Even if they're doing reading, for example, still you have to monitor that. You probably have to answer a lot of questions during the activity. So no bed of roses, but great opportunity to develop for them and for you.
So how can you work with mistakes that those students make?
That's an issue. That's an issue because I mean, the question is whether they make mistakes, actually.
Okay.
I mean, because when you read or when you listen to them and you want to give them some feedback, you realize, come on, what feedback can I give, right? I mean, tense is correct. Passive is correct, preposition is correct. What can I do? So they don't make so many overt mistakes, right? So this feedback that you have to give them is quite specific. It's a different feedback, right, than you give to I know B1, B2 students. First of all, it has to be very individual. So you can't say you did great with your speaking, right? You have to be very specific. And then you should focus on maybe not mistakes, because this is what we teachers typically focus when we want to give feedback. We're looking for mistakes, right?
Red pen and underline.
Right, yeah,
everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
What you focus for, what you have to focus on is room for improvement rather than mistakes, right? For example, I know in your presentation you were great by contrasting different ideas with this on the other hand, right? That was very clear and I could follow easily. But consider using some less common transition, like, I know, having said that, or that being said, right? So it's not that they make mistakes. The only in most cases you'll be giving them where the room for improvement is. So that's actually also the challenge, that because mistakes are easy for teachers, right? You can spot a mistake, right?
Yeah.
You can easily correct it.
It's easy to correct and focus on mistakes, because sometimes we are taught. But I really like comment Jenna put a comment is like, the challenge is to keep them pushing when they have reached, or they have felt that they have reached a plateau in their learning. And they don't feel that they are making progress as much as they want to. And
that's the problem.
I mean, I'd like you to address this element. Is like,
yeah, we mentioned that typically after B2 you are reaching, right, you're getting closer and closer to this plateau, right? This they more and quite a lot of them have this feeling that, well, I don't make any progress because the level is so high. I would say that the solution to that would be focusing on some small steps, right? I know, for example, well, I have a student. We're working on that right now. I'm this year. I have a student who, for example, tends to his pronunciation is a little bit not smooth. Like tends to say things like "our" very properly, right? Because he wants to be proper instead of this a little bit more natural "r," or like saying words separately. I know she is, right, something like that.
It's like lacking this
right?
connected speech. Yeah,
wants to be very proper, very precise, right? And so we just take this small, and we, for a moment, we ignore this, all the rest, right? And we focus on this. And what I would do, I would show them the progress. Like, for example, I recorded, because we're doing some read aloud, so I recorded a text that he produced in read aloud. And now, after some time, we're working on it. I showed him some problems in the pronunciation. Well, that's just like tiny thing. And then I know in 2 or 3 weeks, I will ask him or to record once again to show him the progress, because he is making progress, right? So pick some tiny bits and show them that they are making progress. Maybe they don't know, they can't notice, because probably he will not notice that he used to produce "she is" and now she says "she is," right? Probably he can't notice that. But if you show them, that's your role as a teacher. If you show them, look, here, you've made some progress. That's
so it's like this highlighting torch. Yeah, you need to signal the things that are changing.
You are making progress. It's maybe not that noticeable, but you are making progress all the time. So take those tiny bits to show them that.
Okay, and as we are approaching 10 minutes ahead of us, so potential challenges, like you are under pressure. Am I right? And this is the pressure
and they are as well. Yes.
But looking at the teacher, that the pressure is on your shoulder as well, because you need to keep up. It's not about tenses anymore.
Yeah, just as we discussed, right? So the developing, right? Keep up and develop your language, your cognitive skills as well.
The complex feedback, I think we've covered it, that it needs
Yeah.
to be very individual, it needs to be very specific, it needs to be nuanced.
And well, be ready that it says here it takes time, right? So accept it, right? A little bit more time has to be invested in this, but well, that's our job.
Okay. And the classroom dynamics, what about this one?
That might be a little bit challenging as well. We mentioned those intimidation factor, right? That those high scorers, well, they bring in a lot of enthusiasm, but you have to be careful with some other students, maybe also high scorers, but a little bit less enthusiastic, or lower level students, that can be dominated. So you have to balance that. Just monitor your classes, whether everybody benefits from your class.
Thanks. And I can see a comment, Yasmin, thanks for this comment. Like, if a person accepts the challenge given in the class to solve the task, he is an absolute scorer. So probably it's not about the language, but it's about this perseverance and ability to maintain the course of action, that even if this language or the article, the authentic text could be challenging, I'm not gonna give up, because what I do care is I do care of being up there. Yeah, so it's like struggling and showing perseverance within this course of action.
Non-linguistic factors, as we talked about it.
Yeah,
right?
so the high score,
extra.
Yeah, high score is not only about linguistic elements. There are some extra things, and the constant motivation. I guess this is what we've mentioned, but I like that you need to find ways to reignite the passion for learning.
Obviously, because well, they have achieved such a level that a lot of them think, well, I know English. What should I do? Some are motivated by the exam, right? That I want to score high. But some say, all right, anyway, I will score high, right? So that might not be the motivation. So you have to show them that still you can learn something here, right? Not tenses and not present perfect, obviously, but something extra.
Yeah. And to close with, I'm gonna leave mine, but we start with yours. What are some absolute non-negotiables for you, looking at this when it comes to the teaching practice, when you teach high scorers? So the things that they need to be 100% present in this exam preparation course.
So on my side, I would say, well, two things that were actually mentioned today. That you have to go beyond the class, look for authentic, real life, academic life material. I know, lectures, articles, right? Also essay topics, for example. So go beyond, right? Use authentic, work on authentic things. Go beyond some course books, right? That's one thing. And another thing that also we mentioned, that is the sophistication, right? They will be looking for this sophisticated language. So give them this language, right? So in the feedback, and I know modeling, whichever phase, but give them this sophisticated, high-profile language. That's your role as a teacher.
Okay, and we do have a comment, Slitvana. Thanks a lot. Thanks for raising this issue. So teaching high score is challenging, and I'd like this to stand out. It's not like, as you mentioned, like spring walk through the fields with a gentle wind. It's like sailing a speedboat or running or driving a speed car. It gives you inspiration, but at the same time, you need to know how to, I would say, when it comes to mechanical comparisons, how to operate this powerful beast that has tremendous potential.
But think of the wind in your hair, right?
Yes, yeah, think of the wind in your hand, yeah. And I really like what Svitlana wrote, that you have to get out of your comfort zone teaching mode, and to think outside the box at all stages, from planning and teaching. So it's not about having a very structured class. These are totally important, as students begin to move towards the one, but I like that what you mentioned, like out of the box, because it's not about very, let's say, easy language lesson structure. Because if I am the high scorer and you like to make me feel bored during your classes, probably I would sooner or later die cognitively looking at the very basic structures that we need to work on. Am I right?
And you will leave my class, right? If this is not obligatory class, this is like preparation course. You will leave it, right? So you have to think out of the box, but also you make them
yes,
do the same, right?
That's true, and this is what I appreciate. I appreciate you mentioned that this is a contract between you and them. Hey, this is real deal. You aim high, so if you aim high, I expect you to provide high performance within the class. And the non-negotiable element from me is that those lessons need to be challenging, as you mentioned in some of the comments. They need to be on the level that would keep me on my toes, that it would keep me cognitively active, because I expect someone to develop, and I'm no longer the amateur. And the second one, non-negotiable, if I were to run another exam preparation course, the screening procedures would be very precise at the very beginning, because B1 plus student is expecting to be 85 or 90. It's not a high scorer within the next month or two, but I would expect true honesty from a teacher, that how long it takes to develop and to take me to the almost native-like language abilities. Would you agree with me, Kamil?
Yeah, that causes problems for the rest, right? Because if you have a group of high scorers and then let's say 2 B1 plus, well, they get motivation, but so they take motivation, but they don't bring in too much, and they might damage, right, the dynamics of the group easily.
Yeah. And I can leave, I think I told you, but I can leave the anecdote with me as a student. And I attended some really intensive course. We expected to be C2 level doing the exams. And my buy-in for the course is like, I had this phone conversation, and I was about to join like 1 month later. The course was already closed, the group was closed, but I managed to get in with the director, and they said like, okay, what's your level of English? And then I said like, I've got first certificate in English, and I think I got B. And they said like, okay, but the course was 2 year long. Yeah, so we had 2 year long intensive course. And I came to the class, and on Saturdays, I guess, or on Fridays, we are doing the tests, mainly, only tests. And the first test that I got from this teacher, I remember he came to my desk, he looked at me and say, a blind person must have checked your first certificate, because your language level is like, I don't even want to describe it. So for some might be like too harsh, but for
wasn't
me,
very sophisticated. Speaking of sophistication,
yeah, the feedback was like very down to earth and saying like, you need to work really hard. And I was really expected to work really hard in this intensive course. The passing threshold for my exams, where we were expected to be C2 level, was 98% on monthly tests. Because those teachers, and some people would call them, what a crazy guy, and I don't want this one. But his idea was, you want to be proficient, and we are doing the like newspaper translation articles. We had to do it live. You want to be proficient, so act proficient. There is no room for those little mistakes. We can work on them, but you need to be high level. And this is like, I guess, students who expect to be 90 on PTE Academic. Yeah, if you expect to be 90, so
no room for mistakes.
So no room for mistakes. So you can actually you need to be very proficient. So absolute non-negotiables, demanding, challenging, out of the box, and you need to use this wind, because you are dealing with these powerful engines.
Yeah.
Okay. So remember that there's a book, by the way, if the audience, you're interested, by Angela Duckworth. It's called The Grit. So about perseverance. And there is only way, the only way to get to the top of the mountain is one step at a time. And you can start with low-level students. That's okay. One step at a time, and you can bring them to the top of the mountain, but make sure that their endurance needs to be developed to get there. Am I right, Kamil?
So it is, yes, it is one step, not 100 steps at a time, just
Yes.
like within a month from B1 to C2.
Yes, that's true. Just 1 minute or 2 minutes for some comments. My English is not so good. Okay, so if we look at this sentence, my English is not so good. So I guess we are not dealing with high scorer. Am I right?
Yeah, because high scorers are very self-aware typically.
Yeah.
They know they don't have any problems. They don't experience any problems with their English, right?
So English is just the medium to convey the message. It's not like a struggle.
Just as I said.
Yeah, and I need 80 scores in writing. So probably I would just be very realistic about measuring my level of English, looking at the skills, and just designing or redesigning it brick by brick, Kamil. Yeah, just to see which areas I need
identify weaknesses, obviously, and identifying where you can improve.
Yeah,
obviously, with somebody that might help you.
Yep, and just I'm gonna look for one more. How do I get 90 in writing? Well, Kamil, any suggestions?
So obviously 19 writing means like flawless. So then it's not only the language and sophisticated language that we talked about, but there's also this, well, in-depth examples, right? Effective, like discussing arguments. So again, there's a little bit more than language in 90. That has the essay, the writing has to be really impactful. So go beyond sophisticated language and look for some non-linguistic elements, like, as I said, in-depth examples, effective arguing that will make it flow, right, and read flawlessly.
Yeah, because 90 for me is like you submit your research paper to a publisher, and they no longer think about the language. They think about
the content,
the depth of the message you are trying to convey. Yeah, so I guess, and another option is like just to be, if you expect 90, just are you totally sure that your language abilities are within those learning objectives? So you can use GSE Toolkit, you can select 85, 90 and select writing objectives and look at them and say like, do I know how to do it? Is it already in my active language, or am I struggling? And if you are struggling, it means that you work with this learning objective, okay? Some of the person said something about the memorized scripts or templates. If you are high scorer,
you don't need it.
You don't need it because your critical thinking skills, your linguistic abilities is like 90. You go to work and you perform using language as medium, and you don't need it. The moment you need it,
you're not a high scorer.
Probably, I don't know if Camille agree. The moment you need it, it means that there is some way ahead of you, and you are not a high scorer because you are using some fixed structures. And as I work with students,
not doing it naturally.
Yeah, you're not doing it naturally. And why are you using fixed structures? Because you lack flexibility. And if you lack flexibility and fluency, it means that you need to have something solid. But this is not about high score. High score is about the person who is, as Sweetwana mentioned, and some of you, is like stepping out of the box in all the spheres and being very fluent and very open and conveying ideas. That's the main point for them. Any final comments, Kamil, for our audience?
Right. I would say if you're afraid, because we talked a little bit about challenges, if you're afraid of high scorers, don't be. They will bring a lot of input. Don't be afraid of them.
Super. And I would add, challenge yourself in language learning. Like, give yourself exposure to the things you don't know about when no one is watching. Because, for example, you don't want to show that you are dealing with proficiency articles and you are still struggling to learn them. Maybe some of us need this type of, but challenge yourself. So this is like some of us mentioned it in the chat, and you mentioned like pressure is not only on the test taker, but pressure is also on your shoulders. But this gives beautiful results.
Right.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
You, dear audience, for your comments, for your questions. Please remember that you can access the recordings on the websites around the world with PTE Academic, and you've got skills development sessions. So this is where you actually can learn about writing skills, vocabulary, pronunciation, and we deliver the test taker sessions as well, that we talk about skills development. And here we wanted to close those PTE Academic sessions with those teaching those who demand and expect, but they are a beautiful gift to the teachers around the world, the high scorers.
Beautiful words, right?
Yeah.
To finish that, right? Very
Thanks
good
a lot.
conclusion.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day and just step out into this high score reality. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.